Hey everyone, welcome to Femme Fables. Megan here, and I have Leah with me today. And this is going to be a two-part series where we're talking about mental health, identity, sexual identity, and relationships. So Leah came on, she has a great story kind of talking about her journey through that. So that'll be the first part, and the second part we're kind of getting the relationship aspect of it. So, if you want to introduce yourself.
First of all, thank you so much, Megan, for taking a chance and asking me to be on this. I know Megan from high school.
Yeah.
Born and raised Tampa, Florida. Went to Gorey Wilson Plant, and I was living in Los Angeles for 13 years, and I moved back at the start of COVID, and here I am. I'm excited to be here with you.
Yes.
Tap back into the high school days a bit, but yeah, I guess I'm a social worker at training. I don't know what else to share, but that's a bit about me.
Okay, awesome. So where do you want to kind of start with kind of talking about your journey? I think it's such a good topic and something a lot of people don't feel comfortable talking about, even current day. I mean, I think people are more comfortable talking about mental health, but I think it's really important to talk about how that can impact your relationships. And, I talk a lot about dating, obviously, and I've been very open. I go to counseling. I've been in counseling on and off for a few years. And, I was talking to somebody the other day and I was like, have you considered counseling? And, they kind of snapped back and were like, no, I know my issues. And I'm like, it's not a bad thing. Like, to talk to somebody who has no bearing on your life. Like, it's a good thing. But I think everybody should go to counseling at some point in life. But that's my personal opinion. But.
Right. And I agree with you. I think therapy is really powerful. And I think that being around people, being in communities where even outside the therapy office, you can be open and vulnerable. I think so often it's perceived as a weakness to share, whether it's a challenge you're going through or, it's perceived as a weakness, but it honestly is so empowering to be able to externalize in a safe space what's going on. Because at the end of the day, from what I've learned, so many of us are going through things. We're keeping it inside and not saying anything out of fear of reaction. But if we could actually connect on those things, there's so much like growth and healing and just a sense of belonging and community that could come out of that and empowerment. So
for sure. All right. So where do you want to begin? Let's start.
Okay.
We're starting at high school?
Right. So a few things I just wanted to mention. Speaking of vulnerability, I was telling Megan when I usually speak, one thing I like to do is sort of just be vulnerable and open from the get-go that, like right now I'm feeling nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken in front of people numerous times, but I've never done a podcast, which is more conversational. So I was talking to my fiancé and I was telling her how I'm feeling vulnerable. What if I say the wrong thing or, they realize I'm not that great, or just all those voices started to come into my head. And I said, let me do what usually grounds me. And that is just be open about it. Like I was feeling nervous on my way here, but as I'm saying it, I'm feeling much better even just externalizing it. And I wanted to bring this up because this is a big point I'm going to touch upon further as we go about just sort of being open and vulnerable around others as a strength. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention was, yes, I am a woman who is engaged to a woman. And, I just ask that even if, you are heterosexual or whatever your identity may be, just try and see a part of yourself in my story, because that's another major lesson that I've learned is even though my story may be different from yours or someone else, like at the end of the day, we all can connect.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So that's my sort of.
Thank you for being vulnerable. It is difficult. Like even starting this podcast is difficult because I was going through a breakup and talking about it and being very open about what I was going through. It was tough and it's not easy. So I appreciate it.
I'm curious, has it gotten easier for you now, just being open in this space you've created?
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's like night and day from when I first started.
That's awesome.
But.
Right, so I guess I'll just start by saying, as I mentioned, born and raised in Tampa, Florida. I've known from a very young age that I felt different.
Mm-hmm.
I would say starting as early as preschool, I had crushes on boys, but I also was in love with my preschool teacher, who was a female.
Uh-huh.
Yes. I know to say that someone knows as young as 4 years old that they are different. Like, I've actually had some of a negative response from that. So yeah, I was in preschool. I knew I had feelings for my preschool teacher. I remember sitting in the bathtub. It was after work. My mom just got home from work. Hey, buddy. And we had our ritual where I would like play with my pails, and she was pregnant at the time, and she'd put her feet over the bathtub and I would pour the water on her feet. It was just like such an innocent moment. And I said, Mommy, I have feelings for Miss M. I'm going to say M. Like a husband does for a wife. And so my mom told me later on, she was thinking, oh shit. And it's not because, I hope it's okay.
I curse all the time.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that she didn't want me to be gay, but that she knew it would be a difficult life. But she thought, hey, maybe I'll drop the topic. It won't come up again, but it definitely did multiple times over the years. For the most part, I had a really happy childhood. I did feel like I was different, and I couldn't have fully explained it back then, but in looking back, I did feel out of place in certain ways. But then I had a couple instances throughout, I would say, elementary, middle, and high school where there was sort of either an outing of me in front of a large group of people. I remember someone I had a crush on, a boy in elementary school, said, everyone knows you're a lesbian. And it was so confusing because I had such a crush on him, but apparently everyone knew I was a lesbian.
Were you crushed when he said that?
Well, to be honest, I didn't
Unintended?
know.
You had a crush on him. He outed you as a lesbian.
I know.
Kids, man.
And he kicked me as he said it, which is, I don't know. So crushed in
I hope he's bald now. No, I'm just kidding.
No, full head of hair.
Damn it.
But yeah, so it was funny because I went home and I was like, Mom, what's a lesbian? And so my parents freaked out. Ended up calling their parents. And then there was another incident in middle school where someone I had feelings for, a female, said, everyone knows you're a lesbian. And I essentially was like, okay, this word's coming up again. Whatever it means, it's bad. And I have to do everything in my power to suppress whatever I'm doing that's causing people to see me as weird and so that's, I think, when I started to just try to change who I was.
Or hide parts of it, suppress it, basically. Oh, this is bad, so now I need to let's cover that because the reaction was poor, so this is not good.
Right.
And wow, that's actually pretty impactful. And how old are you?
Yes.
What age?
I think it was the 7th grade.
So 12-ish?
Yes. Yeah. And really that trickled into all areas. I knew I had kind of a quirky sense of humor. I always say quirky wrong, and my fiance makes fun of me, but I said it right?
You did.
Quirky.
Uh-huh.
But I even said, don't show that, just be. So by the time I got into high school, I definitely kind of got lost in this person I wanted to present myself as to fit in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
think everybody goes through that in high school, right? You want to fit in. You don't. I think people like to stand out more now, current day. I think it's not as, but back in our day, like, no. You wanted to blend with everybody. So.
Yes, absolutely. And, again, back to that point where my story may be different, but I also realize, like, this is so common for people. I hope it's okay. I can ask you some questions. I'm curious if you ever had a moment growing up where you realized, like, there were parts of yourselves you felt you had to hide, or...
I mean, I think, I've always identified as straight. Like, I never had those types of, like, urges, but I think there is definitely, I think mine was more of, we went to a very affluent, wealthy high school, and I didn't grow up in a wealthy family. So I almost felt like an outsider because I was driving my parents' minivan and everybody else was driving, like, luxury cars at 16 years old.
Right.
So, it was a different identity that way. Like, I almost felt like an imposter because I only got to go to plant because we used my grandmother's address. And we eventually lived in that house. It was on a Zeal, I think, until maybe like right by the press box.
I remember going to your house.
Yeah. So, but if it wasn't for that, I don't know where I would have went. I don't know what other, I'm trying to think. I don't know. But yeah, like, but my dad went to plant, like, my brothers went to plant, but yeah, it was more of like, I'm not buying or wearing Abercrombie, you know what I mean? Because it's too expensive. Like, so I had a different, like,
Right.
But it's still that's still part of it, right? Like, you still feel like you don't fit in because,
Absolutely.
you're not wearing the right clothes or the right shoes, or you don't drive the right car, and things like that. And there were super popular people that weren't wealthy either that went there, but yeah.
Right. You're right. Like, I drove an old school Volvo.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I would pull in, then you're right, like Mercedes, Beamers.
Mm-hmm.
So in that regard, yeah, I did feel a little, like the standard was set for us.
Yeah.
That was unattainable for a lot of people. But yeah, exactly. I think bottom line is there's this feeling of shame that comes up for people. That, you're not good enough, I think shame is the worst.
And you felt that at a young age because some guy calls you a lesbian and everybody, you know what I mean? And that's traumatizing,
Right.
For a child,
Right, yeah. It took me many, many years to work through all that shame.
Yeah.
And I realized along the way that a lot of people, deal with feelings of shame. And it's not necessarily talked about, but there's even feelings of shame of even just being open about feeling bad about things. It's like there's so
about
many
your
layers.
shame.
Right, shame about feeling shame. Like, come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I felt that too, feeling, without having the Beamer or whatever.
Yeah.
But then I also had this sort of secret that I was holding that actually I don't think really was a secret, that I had feelings for women. And, I tried all I could to hide it. I try to wear a lot of dresses, even though I'm not a huge dress person. I try to overcompensate in certain ways, but yeah, high school's tough. I just had no idea who I was. I knew I knew I wanted to fit in. I knew I wanted to be liked and I wanted to be loved, and so I was going to try and create that person that I thought would get that attention. But I got lost in that. And it was very hard to become a stable adult. I feel when you're not grounded in yourself. I had a lot of issues with depression. I remember a lot of days in high school where I'd just sleep on the couch and just want to escape. When, spend the weekend on the couch trying to sleep it away. High school was tough. Did you ever go through any depression?
I don't think I did. I can't honestly, I feel like my memory is so bad, like, about things, like, these days. Like, I don't know if it's just getting older, but I'm sure I did. I'm sure there are definite moments where I was like, I don't want to go to school today. You know what I mean? Or, and it wasn't, and I think, like when I didn't make the dance team, you know, and somebody else got picked over me whose parents paid money to the school. You know what I mean? Like, those type of situations where I'm like, you know, fuck this place. You know what I mean? I don't want to be here. But I'm sure I had those moments for sure. But I don't think I went into any type of like extreme depression.
Well, I wouldn't be too hard on yourself because I know a lot of people are like, I just don't even want to remember high school. So it might, you know, be, I don't know. Yeah, high school, it can be a great time and it can be a tough time, you know, who knows, but.
There were great moments. Like, I mean, I enjoyed high school, but I couldn't imagine going through that and carrying, like, suppressing this thing about myself that I don't want people to know and then trying to overcompensate so people don't figure it out. Like, that's tough. That's like, it's exhausting.
Right.
You know, like.
Yeah, and then some other things I was dealing with, like I was learning disabilities, quote unquote, that were brought up by the teacher since I was a little kid. So there was also a lot of shame about being able to learn and actually being able to be a productive adult. Because I think back then, teachers, and when I was in elementary, like they didn't put that extra time in for kids who learn differently.
Yeah.
So there was also shame in learning and feeling like I'm just, you know, I come from a family of a lot of college professors, and you know, I was the kid who was never going to make it, right? Who had trouble reading, and you know, so there was that. Also, my mom was diagnosed with Parkinson's when I was 14. It's a, you know, very, very tough diagnosis, neurological. You know, movement control and cognitive challenges. So fortunately, my mom has been an activist in the area of Parkinson's research. But yeah, there was a lot. There was a lot that was going on. And I just couldn't, you know, and I think maybe you had this as well. As a young person, it's hard to envision what a happy, healthy life looks like.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. Did you have your like future painted?
No, I don't even know if I was like thinking that way. You know what I mean? Like, I think I was just trying to make it through. You know, I mean, I think like the typical like I'm gonna go to college and get a great job and I'm gonna get married and have kids. Like, if you had asked me at like 17 if I thought I'd be 38 and single with no kids, like I would have been like, no, like that's not gonna be my life. You know, but yeah. So I don't think I had this like mapped out. I knew I wanted to go to college because I was the first to go to college in my family. So I knew I wanted to do that and, you know, have a great career and things like that. But I didn't have like this picture of what I expected my life to be like. Like, I don't think I was that far ahead. I was just like making it day to day, you know, but.
Right. Yeah. And it was, you know, for me, like, I didn't think about two women getting married.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I remember being in high school and hearing stories of like, what is your wedding dress going to look like? Or what's your house going to, remember that MASH game? How many kids you're going to have?
MASH. I love that game.
Yeah. That was fun.
It was fun.
I did play MASH, but yeah, it wasn't until a few years ago I actually truly envisioned myself as someone who could get married and have a well-balanced, healthy life. So I wasn't sitting there I didn't know what was going to happen with myself.
Yeah.
Like, could two women have kids? Like, was that, and actually, to be frank, I wasn't even ready to accept that I am a lesbian.
Right. Yeah. Right. So high school, and then when did you move?
So I went to Florida State, and I was a partier already.
I was like, how was college?
Right. And so I went to Florida State. I wasn't grounded. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted. And there was all this partying around me, and I loved to partake in that. And I just wasn't mature enough for it. And I ended up essentially not failing out, but I was not doing well. So I came home. I went to Hillsborough Community College, did really well. I love community college. I think it's a great step for young people if that speaks to you. And then I went to UNC Asheville to go back to school, but in all reality, I wasn't ready because I hadn't worked through a lot of my internal issues yet. Like I had a success at home in community college, but there was still a lot inside that I struggled with. And so when I went there, sort of the same thing happened again, where I ultimately just was not ready for school. And I had an aunt who always, like, she's a straight shooter, and she would say, Leah, you have so much potential, but you're too busy partying, essentially. And I had all this, I was struggling with depression, all these other mental health issues, and she, wanted to sort of call me out on, I did, do like maybe smoke a little too much weed or drink too much or did these things. And that's not something we were talking about as a family. But she's the one who's like, look, you cannot pull wool over my eyes. It's interesting. In some ways, my parents or my father was more open to talk about the mental health element, but to talk about like substance abuse, like, was not something that as a family we were ready to talk about. So he would, I don't know, there was like another level of shame there.
Okay, yeah.
But at this point, after I failed out of college the second time, my dad's like, I will listen to you as well. So she had two of us who were like, no. She wanted me to come out to Los Angeles to go to this place called Beit Shuvah. It is a Jewish residential treatment center for addiction, but you have people from all faith backgrounds or even non-affiliated that go there. And it's for a range of issues. Some, people just have mental health challenges and some existential challenges, like around, not knowing who you are, whatever that may be. To some people were living there who just came off of Skid Row and had, track marks all over their arms, or had, been in prison for 20 years. Or, so here I was like, coming from, our back, like HB Plant.
Right. Yeah. We set the stage, wealthy, affluent, Beamers.
Yes.
Predominantly white high school to all walks of life.
Right. It, like, in this facility was like a microcosm of everything you find. And it was an older building. It was like formerly a nursing home, so it wasn't like the prettiest inside. There was all these things, like, when I got there. So ultimately, after I failed out the second time, I was just like, clearly, I don't know what I'm doing. And I said to my aunt, I'll do whatever it takes. And so we agreed to, I was going to hop on a plane to Los Angeles. She wasn't sure if I was actually going to get off the plane or even show up for the flight. And I did, and I got off the flight, and she saw me. And then it's funny, we went out to get Chinese food before we went there. And I just remember like having this big talk about life. And she was saying, like, because I felt really bad. I kept having also academic issues, like focusing, concentrating. She's like, Leah, this is the most important schooling you'll ever have. It's the school of life. Like, you're going to get a master's in life. You're going to get to know yourself. You're going to work through it. Like, focus on this. And if you can achieve this, this is just as significant as getting a degree from wherever. And I didn't get it back then, but she was so right.
Yeah.
But I had that pep talk, and then we both opened our fortune cookies, and both of them said, you can only turn to yourself for peace.
Oh, wow. Oh, that gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, we were both like, yep, this is
we're on the right path there.
We're on the right path. But when I walked in and I saw the facility, and I just, like, I immediately was like calling my dad up saying, like, get me out of this place and away from these people. I am not like them. Like, it was, I was definitely judging people's circumstances, you know, losing their kids to, you know, drugs, or just like a lot of decisions that got them to that place. But I didn't belong there. So, that I had a couple phone calls to my dad where
was he like, no, you're staying, like, tough tough it out, kid?
he just, I mean, he actually kind of humored me and was like, give it a couple more weeks.
Yeah.
It was good we were so far from each other, because, you know, something that's not uncommon is sort of enabling. Like, everybody wants to be in a good place, and it's hard to hear your kid sitting there saying they're miserable and this place is hard. He didn't know. It wasn't horrible.
Yeah,
like,
right. Yeah, you're young, and
yeah, so you know, he let me stay there, and my aunt would definitely check in on me, like, you know, make sure we kept having those talks to keep me on track. But it was such a powerful experience, and I realized that part of that judgment that I had towards others was the same judgment I had towards myself. And in opening myself up and learning to connect with people from all different backgrounds, sort of just helped me to break through that shame, the judgment, all the stuff that was keeping me in this loop. And I remember there was this woman named, changed name, Sarah. She had done 20 years in prison and was a counselor there. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I do not want someone who has been in prison for 20 years for planning a robbery and someone had died and all that. Wow. I'm like, this is going to be my counselor. And she ended up being one of the most powerful people in my life. Her level of insight, and I think she developed it from while being in prison, or, you know, there's a lot of hard lessons you learn while you're in there, and sometimes you can find a place of peace while you're in that situation, and it takes a lot of soul searching. But she just had this level of insight that was like, when she gave me advice, I listened, and I also felt like she understood me more than most people. Like, I just felt seen and heard. And I think just from there, I really committed to this sort of, and I think it is tied to mental health, is just allowing to see a part of yourself in other people, and find connection and be able to be there for each other in relating through your pain or whatever it may be. So I really, to this day, I find all sorts of ways to connect with people who I maybe usually wouldn't. I'm Jewish, and, you know, over time, I mean, it's not a secret that there's been, over the years, tension between Muslims and Jews. And so I sought out joining a Muslim-Jewish fellowship to connect and, you know, see a part of myself. And I made the most incredible best friends who are Muslim, and I related to them in ways I had never related to anybody, and found healing through shared either trauma or whatever it was we had been through. So to this day, I believe that seeking people out and connecting with people is a part of, for me, it's a part of mental well-being.
I get that. So when you were in that facility, did you have like an aha moment or something that you were just like dawned on you like, oh my God, like kind of clicks, you know? Because at first you're like, I fucking hate this place. Like, what the fuck am I doing here? I haven't been to prison. Like, not shooting shit up my arm. Like, what?
Yeah.
So yeah, what was kind of a.
Yeah, so I was still kind of stuck in this shame loop where I was just like thinking about, because I'm sober, I have all this time to think about, through therapy and the 12-step program, all these things that happened in the past. And I was just like in this loop, like feeling so much shame. And I was thinking about something I learned. As I mentioned, it's a Jewish residential treatment center, though it's open to everyone, but they do use some Jewish teachings. But there's this story about how, the story of the Exodus. It's something we tell a lot at Passover, where the Jews were enslaved in Egypt, and then you have all the plagues that happened, and eventually Moses leads them out of Egypt, and the Jews are wandering the desert for 40 years. And basically, the story that really hit me and resonated was, so Moses is up on Sinai, super frustrated because he's trying to do everything to lead everybody to freedom, and yet they're like lost for 40 years and not able to move forward. And so he takes the tablets, and out of frustration breaks them. And he's like, oh my gosh, what's God gonna do? I just broke one of the most holy, items in the tradition. And then God goes up to Moses and is like, Yasher Koach, which means essentially congratulations. Congratulations, you broke them. And Moses was like, what is this even? Moses was confused. But it touches upon this idea that sometimes things need to be broken in order to move forward and recreate something that is more solid, that integrates all the lessons and creates just a life beyond that you had imagined. And I did. I needed to look at all those failures and all the lessons I learned and remember that in my heart, I'm a good person, and just take all that and just keep moving forward, and don't look at it as something shameful. Like, just take all that and just keep moving forward and know you're a good person.
Yeah.
Your heart's in the right place. So I think brokenness is actually a great opportunity for, you got to reframe it.
Yeah. Reframing, I think, is a huge thing. And you kind of talked about it briefly earlier about reframing. Like, okay, this isn't a failure moment, right? This is a growing moment, or this is a learning moment, which I've been guilty of, like kind of getting into that like victim mentality. Why me? Why is this happening? And it's like, okay, it's happening for a reason. I can reframe it and be like, what lessons did I learn? What could I do differently? How can I do better? And the last relationship that I had, that when I started this podcast, really broke me. And I'm not ashamed to admit it. Like, I know people were like, they didn't. In fact, like, they want to just put on this facade like they weren't really hurt. No, I was deeply hurt, and it took a lot, and it took only me to pull myself out of it. But something great came out of it, like the podcast, you know what I mean? And kind of learning more about my mental struggles and my trauma that has affected me as an adult. And I think this is a good like ending point to lead into the next piece of being in a relationship and how you bring that trauma with you, and finding a partner who's also at an emotional level to be able to understand that and work with it. So I think that's such a great story, because beautiful things do come out of broken pieces.
Absolutely.
I'm going to tell people that story. They're going to be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like,
didn't you read the Old Testament?
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's going to conclude part 1. Thank you, Leah, so much for being open. We're going into part 2, where we're kind of going to go more into like lessons, and then kind of get more on the relationship piece, and mental health. So thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for part 2. Bye.
Bye.